What is up, and welcome back to Talking Nutrition. As always, I'm your host, Johan, and we are going to dive further into gut health today. Like I said last time, we'll be alternating between the two different kind of topics of, at least for the foreseeable future. I want to really break down the talk I had in Oslo, where we talk more fat loss, muscle gain, behavior change around that, dieting all the time, and all the good stuff. And of course, nutrition and lifestyle, more like the general fitness goals. But today we're going to also continue with our gut health series. So you might have listened to episode 208 back in, I think it was early March, I want to say just about a month ago, where we dove into low stomach acid, which is a very common thing. A lot of people think they have higher stomach acid. They respond poorly to things like dairy, maybe even like a lot of burping, acid reflux. A lot of times this can have to do with low stomach acid. Now, that can be stress related. What you're going to notice today is overlap, okay? If you don't have it yet, go to my Instagram right now, DM me the word gut, and you'll get my free gut repair blueprint, which isn't just a guide that'll just send you right off the rip. It actually gives you 10 symptom-based questions so that you have something to look at and take that, read the guide, and then understand better, do I need to look more at leaky gut? Do I need to look more at malabsorption issues, right, with that low stomach acid? Which, once again, I said it before, I'll say it again. If we have low iron, for example, it often has to do with the absorption issue and not the actual iron intake. Could be iron intake, but a lot of times what I see in my practice with my actual clients, low stomach acid, poor absorption, but this then also plays into gut dysbiosis, which we will talk about in a future episode, which is another section, of course, of the guide, and sluggish bile and liver detox, okay? I think especially when it comes to the liver detox, this is something that is, look, I almost hate using the word detox because of social media and marketing and mainstream and how people now think that detox means being on a fucking tea and juice cleanse. No. Your liver is the hardest worker in the body. Everything you consume, basically everything that goes around in the body goes through the liver, okay? And the liver does need to be able to clear toxins, right? Excess hormones, make these from fat soluble to water soluble so you can actually pee and poop them out, right? And this is a real thing. Like, I see a lot of fitness influencers, not to stay on like the liver too much, because we will have a separate episode for that, dedicated episode. But I see all these trainers who have no understanding of functional, these influencers and motivate. Look, these people are saying you don't need a detox because your liver can do it itself. Correct. In a healthy individual, that is the case. But if you have impaired liver detox pathways, whether it's phase 1, 2 combined, right? We're also constipated, which means that's actually that phase 3, right? We can't get rid of it. It doesn't leave the body. These are things we do sometimes need to support and optimize. And I've done a protocol that we call the flush as well myself. And it's a great way to upregulate that if it's necessary, right? Anytime I will work through a gut case or people have hormonal imbalances, we got to start with the liver, because that is where hormones are, metabolized, detoxed, converted. If we think of hypothyroidism, okay, so is it truly a thyroid output thing? Or is it a T3 issue to where your T4 is not converted to T3? Where does that happen? Mostly liver gut. Now you start to understand that we can't just say, we're going to look at gut, or we're going to look at the hormones, or we're going to look at thyroid. Like, all these things all go hand in hand. Today we'll talk about leaky gut, and I actually want to add to this series, and we're going to go further into things like the thyroid and Hashimoto's and those kind of things. Because pretty much every single time, or I'll put it this way, every single time I've seen people deal with Hashimoto's, the gut is a big component. I recently talked about this on my Instagram. You might actually be able to catch it. If you go to my Instagram, you're going to see a carousel, which is a video kind of based carousel where I'm wearing a gray hoodie. If you are interested in more like the Hashimoto's, the thyroid conversation, check that out. Let me see real quick. The first slide says Hashimoto's, the thyroid isn't the problem. This is an immune system issue, right? And a bit of a mini rant, because also there, right? We need to look at the triggers, just how we do that with gut health, so that we start to understand why we are dealing with these symptoms or disease in the first place, so that through nutrition and lifestyle and everything else around that, you can address it, okay? Stress is also, here in today's episode, going to be a big component. Sleep is going to be, okay? But what is leaky gut? Obviously, if you're new to this, this podcast or this mini series, you could also start with the stomach acid episode we did recently. But either way, welcome. If you're a returning listener, you already know it. I'm going to ask you one more thing before we get in, and that is to leave a quick little rating and or review on Spotify or Apple. If you don't mind, you could do it right now while listening. Because look, I'm doing this for free, out of passion, and I do want to help you, but I want to help more people, right? And the best way to reach more people is if you leave a rating so that people see, hey, right, this actually shows up. Let me check this out. What's Talking Nutrition? Let me see, right? Now, we're going to get into leaky gut today as part of our mini series on gut health. So if you ever wonder why suddenly you react to certain foods, whether it's gluten, dairy, right? Or why your skin maybe is flaring up. Maybe it's acne, rashes, eczema, or maybe your mood and brain fog and those kind of things, but you kind of don't understand why, right? It could actually have to do with your gut lining leaking things into the bloodstream that are not supposed to be there, okay? So we're going to break down leaky gut, what it is, but also maybe some things you can do. And what I would start with as a coach, right, a practitioner, working through these cases, through nutrition and lifestyle. And you might be surprised what our main first step is going to be, okay? Now, leaky gut. I don't even believe the medical field recognizes this term as an official thing. It will be called intestinal permeability. Oftentimes it's called leaky gut, okay? But it's an actual physiological process of your gut lining breaking down and leaking through things that are not supposed to end up in the bloodstream. Okay, so what is leaky gut? I want you to think of your gut lining as a protective layer between your food microbiota and then your bloodstream. Okay, and you can think of it as almost like a security gate, let's say, right, with selective entry, like only people with a pass can go through. Okay, which would be things that you want to go in, nutrients, for example. Okay. Now, that same gate's job is to keep out toxins, bacteria, and undigested foods, for example, undigested proteins, right, out, because those things are supposed to stay in the gut and not end up in the bloodstream. So think of that gut lining as not like one close-off thing, is actually tight junctions. Okay, so if you're watching this on YouTube maybe or Spotify video, we have these tight junctions and these could open up. Okay, now this is supposed to happen selectively for those nutrients, but not when there's toxins, etc. Right? Those things need to be kept out. That's the whole point of a security gate. So when those tight junctions loosen, right, and those undigested food particles end up in the bloodstream, or microbes or toxins, the immune system activates. This is something I want you to keep in mind. That's why I also want you to go to that Hashimoto's post, because when you're talking Hashimoto's, there's 3 components that we need to look at. There's genetics, there are triggers, which this could be one of them, right? And then there's intestinal permeability. Triggers could also be food and other things, but intestinal permeability is huge. So when it comes to Hashimoto's, there's a great book also by Isabella Wentz. She actually talks about this too, to where you gotta address the gut. Like you gotta fix the leaky gut in order to reverse things like Hashimoto's, which is a very possible thing. People can lower their TPO antibodies, okay? We need to understand that Hashimoto's, not to stay on the topic, but we need to understand that this is not a thyroid issue. It starts with things like leaky gut. It starts with those tight junctions being compromised. Now, things are triggering that immune system. That immune system in this scenario selects the immune system then targets thyroid peroxidase, okay, an enzyme related to the thyroid, and now it starts to basically scar over time the thyroid glands, okay? This is where we'll always look at TPO-AB on someone's blood work to see, hey, is there any kind of autoimmunity going on? Do we suspect any leaky gut? So that we know, hey, we need to look at gut health. And this is why testing is a very key thing, okay? So that immune system treats those leaked particles as invaders. Immune system activates, inflammation triggers, okay? Now, what are some root causes here? I think root causes is a big buzzword also online. And there's people who do it right, and there's people who kind of use it as like a marketing term. But look, we do need to look at the root cause. What is causing our issues so we can reverse conditions, okay? Or even just get you to a good place to where you feel better. This even goes outside of disease. This even goes, beyond things like the gut or the thyroid or whatever, hormones, right? Look, if you come into my coaching practice and we're not even talking gut health, we're just talking straight fat loss goal, okay? I'm not going to look at, okay, you're overweight, you need to do this. I'm going to look at, why did we end up overweight in the first place? Okay, so we have an emotional eating issue. We have no structure in our day. We're sleeping barely. We are stressed out of our minds. Let's address those things first before we even consider fat loss, so that one, you can get consistent, your body also gets a chance to feel good for once and function. This is what true root cause approach means, okay? Also with our lifestyle, right? We need to understand what are the things that got us here in the first place. Can we address those things? And that is why no fucking diet will ever get you truly to that end goal of, yes, reaching your goal, but also maintaining and changing or upgrading your identity and becoming the person you truly want to be. You got to work through the uncomfortable stuff. We got to work through the things that got us here in the first place. So let's go back to the gut. Understanding we got to look at the root cause of the issue. When it comes to gut health, autoimmune, stress is a massive trigger. Okay, we talked about triggers with Hashimoto's. Same thing here. Stress, chronic stress. Going back to what I was saying with BT's influencer saying, stress is not a bad thing. And people talk about cortisol. And the only reason you gain fat, from cortisol is that you overeat. Now, look, cortisol, chronically elevated, becomes a problem. We need cortisol. It's a thing that gets you going in the morning. We literally need it to survive. But if it's chronically elevated, it can actually disrupt those tight junctions. It also reduces blood flow to the gut. You see, what is the parasympathetic state of the nervous system called? It is literally called rest and digest. It's in the word. It's in the name. We got to be in rest and digest to properly, right, have that digestive system work. This is where healing happens. This is where digestion properly happens. If we're chronically stressed, blood flow goes away from the gut, more towards your muscles, right? You're supposed to fight the bear or run away from it, okay? This is why we are so big on nervous system regulation. We have to start here. You know what? Before stress even, what about sleep? Okay. I think when we're talking stress, the very first thing I would have clients work on and lock in and just absolutely nail is their 8 hours of sleep every night, allowing the body to heal. And we got to start there. We got to get that natural circadian rhythm in place, sleeping well, and then, of course, work through stressors, because stress could be, yes, emotional, but it could also be overtraining, under recovering. It could be micronutrient deficiencies. It could be low-calorie diets. There's so many things, right? Viruses, inflammation. There's so many things that are considered stress to the body, and to the body is all one and the same. So we got to think of that overall load, your allostatic load, okay? But I would start with sleep first, lock that in, and work through, in the meantime, the stressors, because a lot of times these kind of, right, work against each other or with each other too, to where if stress is high, we're going to have a hard time falling asleep because cortisol blunts melatonin production. I just looked into a Dutch test of one of my clients, and her cortisol was really high. Her free cortisol during the day was really high, and her melatonin was super low. Now, why is that? This is a great example. I think generally speaking, what people would do if they would go to a doctor or something, they would say, oh, your melatonin is low. Let's now give you melatonin. But shouldn't we understand the root cause of why melatonin is low? Well, in this case, we looked at a Dutch test. We're like, okay, well, we see that the cortisol is high, so let's actually work through that. Okay, that's why testing is great, because you see in the Dutch test case, you see your cortisol pattern, you understand your adrenal health. Okay, are they cranking too high or they're low, which would be like a further stage of adrenal dysfunction? Okay, we got to look at the root cause. Stress is a massive one. I wouldn't even consider most of the steps that I even mapped out for you in the Gut Repair Blueprint. And if you want to know what I'm talking about, message me the word gut on Instagram, okay? But I wouldn't even look at any supplementation or specific foods or whatever if we're not handling the stress, and especially when it comes to gut protocols, you got to fix stress and sleep first. Okay, the body needs to get a chance to heal. The body needs the environment in order to do its job. Because yes, going back to what people usually say, where, oh, the liver can do it itself. Yeah, if you're generally healthy, then absolutely. Okay, so we got to get you healthy. Now, second is going to be a poor diet. Ultra processed foods, refined sugars, seed oils. Now, with the seed oils, okay, we got to understand, is it the seed oil or is it the food it comes packaged in? Because I don't think people are drinking seed oils by the dozen. I also don't really see a lot of food logs of my clients where they're using a lot of seed oils to cook and whatever. Like, no, it's usually like a butter or something, maybe some like a, low calorie spray, avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil, which with the extra virgin olive oil, like I would still put that on my food after cooking. But I don't really see a lot of people really using those seed oils. We got to understand, what does it come packaged in, which is a lot of that processed food, right? The fast food, etc. Low fiber in general, right? Low fiber diversity. Look, food diversity is something I preach to my clients. You got to get different foods in, not just eat the same stuff over time, okay? And then we get to something that people have a hard time with, gluten and dairy. Okay. Gluten and dairy may be some of the bigger triggers here. Will I say you have to always remove them? No. But in some cases, we should, because if your body's responding, and especially with leaky gut, okay, you got to get gluten out, okay, and the dairy. You got to pull these now, and then maybe over time introduce them, not just going from, one day you're just being on a strict plan and then you go back to normal. No, you got to be smart in this process, and that's why you probably would want to work with a practitioner so you can work through these gut cases, because it is difficult. It needs to be mapped out, and you need to really understand the symptoms and where to look for. And structure is a big one. Okay. Another cause of leaky gut may be overuse of medications like antibiotics, NSAIDs, or PPIs. Okay. So if we look at antibiotics, like let's understand why this may be a problem. Antibiotics, okay. Yeah, they are needed, but they will also kill off your good bacteria, your beneficial bacteria that you want to have. Okay, so if those are low, like that's going to be a problem, right? If you look at the guide, gut dysbiosis, now you start to understand, hey, maybe this thing is triggering multiple things like the leaky gut and the low stomach acid, for example, with the stress, and for example, gut dysbiosis, okay? NSAIDs actually damage the gut lining, and then PPIs actually may increase bacterial overgrowth and leading to inflammation. So you got to understand, like with these kind of things, we need to, yeah, obviously, look, like I'm not against medication at all. I'm not against doctors at all. You will never hear me speak against the medical field, because I don't think that's the right thing to do. And I do see a lot of people do this online. And I wonder if this may be more of a, like a content kind of thing, to where they're saying something controversial. But look, I think we need to work together. When people are sick, you should probably go to a doctor, okay? But we do need to help you with the nutritional lifestyle to get you truly healthy. And sometimes I will say this, your doctor may not always test the right things, or may really know how to apply this in real life and guide you through these things they don't have time for. That's where a coach comes in, because you have daily access to me. You have check-ins with me. We can look at symptoms on a week-to-week basis, a day-to-day basis, instead of, hey, every now and then I'll go to the doctor every couple of months or every couple of years even, you know what I mean? So I think we need to work together here, okay? Medications are necessary, but things like, your antibiotics, PPIs, etc., these can cause issues like leaky gut, okay? And when it comes to low stomach acid and dysbiosis, okay, I think we're looking at things affecting each other. If we think of low stomach acid, right, from episode 1 of this mini series, from earlier this month, I think it was episode 208, poor digestion, or if we have that low stomach acid, right, just poor protein and specific protein breakdown, right, larger food particles, more fermentation also, like this can trigger leaky gut potentially, right? Harmful bacteria, releasing toxins, inflammation, this is more like the gut dysbiosis side of things, and then overgrowth also may increase intestinal pressure, you see. So that's all cool, but like, how would you notice I may have this, right? Because now we're talking how it works, but like, what's maybe something in real life you could pay attention to? So food sensitivities, like, are we responding to any random food, like almost like a healthy food that you would consider good for you? You know what I mean? Are we responding to certain foods, right? Understanding that also, by the way, leaky gut is not just a systemic, or sorry, it's not just a digestive thing, it is a systemic thing. So leaky gut is more a systemic issue, okay? We have those immune system flare-ups, right? Antibodies going up, like the TPO, for example, and now we may actually start to react to foods, right? So the foods, for example, causing reactions, and even if you don't really feel them, right, you might want to pay attention to brain fog, anxiety, mood swings, and skin issues. Because if you have eczema, acne, rashes, this is usually not a skin issue, okay? This is gut inflammation leading to systemic inflammation. We have immune system, and also understanding detox, liver, and skin are very much related. So a lot of times if I see skin flare-ups, I will think, hey, gut and liver, okay? I won't say, hey, like, put this on your skin to try to fix. No, again, we're looking at symptoms. Why is it showing up on the skin in the first place, okay? Brain fog is a big one, fatigue, maybe nutrient absorption issues. So like if you see nutrient deficiencies, hey, maybe start to think, is this a food intake thing? Like, are we eating a whole food diet? Or is it a absorption thing, okay? And then mood swings and anxiety. Understand this, okay? 90% of your serotonin is produced in the gut. I think that says enough. Makes sense. That is why we got to stay on top of these things. That's why we talk about gut health, because I've seen it impact a lot of lives. And I think even through some basic stuff, like I said, honestly, if you fix your sleep and you fix your nervous system regulation, a lot of times these things will heal itself. And you don't even have to have a specific protocol or expensive testing, whatever. Start with a lifestyle. We are a lifestyle first company, okay? We got to start there. We got to understand that the issues we're dealing with, whether it's being overweight, whether it's anything like hormones, thyroid, gut, this usually has to do with our lifestyle and nutrition. So let's start there, okay? Understanding that stress and sleep are huge here. Now, why does this matter, okay? I just told you that 90% of serotonin is produced in the gut. 70 to 80% of your immune system also lives in the gut, okay? So now we understand too, hey, it's not just digestion, it's not just poop and farts and pee. No, it's actually your immune system. So if you feel like we're just dealing with all these kind of chronic, I don't know, like fatigue things or autoimmune patterns or thyroid or joint pain, like that inflammation that we start to feel, we really want to think of the gut here and at least consider, is this one of the factors, right? If the immune system is in overdrive, this does increase the risk of autoimmune conditions. Chronic inflammation becomes systemic. This is where you would want to look at your CRP levels, for example, okay? And these are all things you can support and heal and reverse, okay? So what are some things you can do? Now, I broke this down in a little bit more detail inside the Gut Repair Blueprint. So once again, I'll say it again, message me the word gut on Instagram. You'll get this guide for free. There's no catch. All you got to do is drop me your email just so I know you're actually a real person, not a bot, because I'm not looking for spam on my newsletter, okay? I want to know you're a real person. And then there's going to be those 10 symptom questions so that you can take them, get a scoring, and then see, okay, what section do I need to dive in, okay? And that's also where, you know, I kind of break it down once again. The food sensitivity, so you start to notice the skin issues, the fatigue, the mood swings, brain fog, the inflammation we just talked about. But what are some things you can do? Now, I will be naming a few supplements here, a few things you could potentially remove, which I do suggest. Some specific foods, right? And even some basics like, you know, your hydration standards, salt in your meals, electrolytes maybe even. But before all of this, I gotta say it again, circadian rhythm support and nervous system regulation has to be your starting point. If those two are not good, and you just answer these two questions for yourself, okay? First of all, am I sleeping at least, I'm going to say 7 to 8 hours. I would say 8 if you really want to do some deep healing. 7 to 8 hours consistently, meaning we have a consistent sleep and wake schedule, also in weekends, and we stick with that, okay? The body doesn't care that we want to party over the weekend. The body wants just regularity, okay? Start with your circadian rhythm. Are we getting sunlight in the morning? Are we able to fall asleep, okay? Are we waking up at night? These are things you need to look at. Is it quality sleep? Maybe you have a tracker like your Aura rings, your Whoops, and those kind of things. Look at this data, use the data, and at least check this box. Am I sleeping 7 to 8 hours in the night? And is it consistent? I think consistency is going to be the most important thing. I would rather see you have a consistent schedule of 7 hours than 8 hours, but it's like 5, 6, and then 10, 11, and then everything in between. Regularity is the key here. Nervous system regulation. House stress. And I don't just want you to think, work. Also consider maybe financial stress, relationship, anything else emotional, okay? Now, those are going to be the bigger ones, but also, have we been under eating for a long time? Nutrient deficiencies? Are we overtraining maybe? All those kind of things, okay? Start there. How's our mental health? But also, not just that, are we just pushing ourselves? Because a lot of times when people say, I'm a type A person, no, you're just pushing yourself into the ground and, you work too much and you kind of try to justify that. And look, and I'm being direct here, but I'm very much like this. I tend to push myself too hard if I don't pay attention, which is why I have a coach, which is why I have a mentor, which I am religious about my sleep, which is why my coach has me do breath work every single day. I have my walk in the morning, afternoon, after lunch, evening, right? I have these dedicated moments to slow the hell down because I will also push myself too hard, okay? So this is something that is my weakness. I'll just keep working. To be honest with you, if I didn't have my life in Google Calendar, I would just work a full day. I would forget to eat. I would run myself into the ground after a couple of days because I wouldn't be able to fall asleep, right? Because I am so passionate, which is also like, in a way, a good thing because I keep building this thing here, whether it's the podcast and then the resources for my clients. But you can only go so far. Like, you can push yourself pretty hard, but at some point your body's going to, get tired of your shit. Now your adrenals are out of whack. Now that's going to affect your immune system, your gut, and everything else. And now we are dealing with health issues. High blood pressure, for example. Well, should we look at salt, which is what most people do? Like, just go low salt. Or should we look at the fact that you're stressed out of your mind and you're not doing anything about it? So nervous system regulation means we are slowing down. We have dedicated times in our day where we slow down, we breathe, and we maybe reflect, maybe we do some journaling, or we do some meditation or some yoga. And these are none of the sexy, cool, intense workout exercises where we sweat and we roll around on the floor. No, these are things that support your health and then have to be combined with the fitness lifestyle, okay? I want you to lift weights. I want you to push yourself at the gym, but also want you to really understand the recovery side of things because it is so, so important. This should be non-negotiable. Nervous system regulation, circadian rhythm, and then we can look at some other things. If we truly are dealing with leaky gut, I'm going to suggest removing alcohol completely, caffeine, gluten, dairy, artificial sweeteners, corn syrup, processed foods in general, seed oils. I want to go on a Mediterranean style eating diet here. I don't love the word diet, but in research, right, the Mediterranean diet is actually very well supported for just health and longevity. So that's where I would start. And then we're removing some foods that we know are triggering. If we know, for example, we respond to onions and things like eggplants and bell peppers and garlic. So these are nightshades, and a lot of times, if there's some leaky gut or dysbiosis going on, these can actually cause some symptoms, okay? That is why I would just go heavy on Mediterranean style eating, low FODMAP potentially, just creating a peaceful environment for the body and digestive system to just work, but also not have too much work to do. Make sense? This should all be like pretty clean, anti-inflammatory, because a lot of times here we are dealing with inflammation too. So we might as well layer that in, right? And just making sure that we create a easy to digest eating plan, okay? Why is this important? One, you give your digestion a bit of a break. It is anti-inflammatory. It contains a ton of nutrients, okay? But because you have a structured eating plan, now you can work through the case because you cannot do this if you're just doing random stuff. Yes, I talk about macros and stuff all the time, but these are cases where you want to have a specific, just day-to-day plan that you can repeat so you can start to pay attention, okay? I like a bone broth also, which is loaded with, what's it called again? Collagen, okay? That's going to help repair the gut lining. I like aloe vera juice too. Aloe vera juice can actually support the gut quite well, and it can kind of soothe that gut lining, okay? So those two, if you can layer them in, even if just those two are the only ones, I would start there. Some bone broth daily. I like high protein bone broth, so you want to do, I think it's 8 to 9 grams of protein per serving. You can look it up, but I would just go to Kettle and Fire. That's a great brand. And I would get the beef bone broth. That's a very solid one. I think aloe vera juice, generally speaking, is pretty affordable too. I like that as well. So I would layer that in potentially. I would go pretty clean with my diet, right? Mediterranean style eating. And then I would go over the basics, right? But from a nutritional lifestyle standpoint, those are the main ones. And yes, we're talking about removing foods, which is not something I generally talk about when it comes to lifestyle cases and fat loss in general. If we're working through health issues and gut and everything else, it's going to be good to create that anti-inflammatory diet, that Mediterranean diet. And we do remove certain things that we may even be having on a daily basis, including caffeine and coffee, right? That we tend to overdo anyway. And nicotine is a big one too. Why? Nicotine drives up your nervous system, okay? It almost keeps you in that fight or flight, right? To put you more sympathetic. So it's gonna affect your sleep, etc. Okay. But it's a hard one to quit. Okay. It's a hard one to quit. I get that. So at least be mindful of these things and also try to lower it at some point, right? Over time, if you want to truly just optimize your health. Now, some basic supplementations could be something like a glutamine, zinc, carnosine. I like the omega-3s, obviously very anti-inflammatory. I like bromelain as well. So that's pineapple extract, which is great in supporting the immune system, but also inflammation, lowering inflammation. It's also compared to a medication called low-dose naltrexone, which I just wanted to drop that one there. It's often used when it comes to autoimmune cases, etc. But you can also use something natural, which is a bromelain, which is pineapple extract in higher doses that seems to have a very similar effect. So that could be a really nice one to just help with that immune system and lowering inflammation. Now, obviously, when I list these supplements, I just want you to look into stuff. I'm not saying take this. You have to. Because look, I don't even think you need any supplements if you're sleeping like crap and you're stressed out of your mind. Let's work through that first, then maybe layer in some of the smaller details, okay? But if we are dealing with inflammation, some anti-inflammatory foods and or supplementation will be key here. So I do like to support that. Collagen, right? Whether you get that from bone broth or your supplement, that could be one too. But once again, I would start with the lifestyle, okay? Food, keep it nice and basic, clean, as you would call it, right? Manage your stress, work through sleep, and give that even like a few months, right? At least 4 weeks, because those need to be in a good spot before the body is even able to heal itself. Because that's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to, we are not trying to fix it. We're trying to create the environment so the body can fix itself. Makes sense? So we talked about some basics, right? We talked about removing some of the triggers potentially. And the main reason with that food plan, I would say, is going to be that you just want to have that structure to work through. Because if you don't have anything to where you can say, hey, this is now showing up, okay, so that was after dinner. Okay, maybe we need to swap certain foods. A little tip here, I would say you could look into lowering your veggies and going a little bit more fruit-based. That seems to work really well for digestion too. And then, of course, if things are not improving, this needs to be said. Because obviously this podcast is for educational purposes only. And I'm kind of sharing some things that I know. But look, like whether it's my podcast or anyone else's or like a piece of content, this is likely not something, if you're truly dealing with something, that you should figure out by yourself or try to, because it gets overwhelming. There's so many conflicting camps online and misinformation. And I've even seen, like Hashimoto's challenges and whatever. Look, if you're truly working through stuff, do that with a practitioner, a doctor, someone who knows their shit when it comes to these cases, so that you're not left guessing, buying random supplements and doing things you shouldn't be doing in the wrong order, because that is not how we heal. Like I said, you got to start with the basics anyway. So I would start with that sleep and stress before anything else. Okay. I know I've been repeating myself about those two a lot here, but I'm doing this on purpose. If those are not in a good spot, don't worry about supplementation. Now, would I still go Mediterranean style eating, salmon probably daily, high omega-3s, doing the things like bone broth and, yeah, I would actually. I would remove the triggers and I would go on that plan while fixing sleep and stress. But anything else, leave that for later. If now we are noticing, hey, we're still dealing with symptoms, it's not improving, it's maybe getting worse, maybe this is where a GI map could be great with the zonulin, so you can look at that leaky gut. So like zonulin is expressed when we are dealing with leaky gut, for example. But that's going to be a lot more of a, hey, I'm working with someone to work through the case. So keep it simple, right? Alcohol, ultra processed foods, remove those things for, multiple weeks at least. The bone broth is going to be great, collagen. Deep breathing, so before your meals, that's a big one. If I'm thinking of some basics I would have my clients do, is breathing exercises in general. For sure, like before meals, I want you to be in rest and digest before eating, okay? Wind down routines in the evening, starting your day slowly. If you always wake up and you just boom, like you're go right away, maybe create a schedule so that you have a little bit more time in the morning where you can maybe even go on a short walk, or at least slowly start your day instead of just jumping like headfirst into stress. And with that, I wanted to wrap it up because once again, we could keep talking about these things. But we still have 2 other episodes to go based on this exact same guide, where we're going to dive further into your gut dysbiosis, and then also liver detox, bile, and what that truly means. Because once again, like I said earlier, it is something that's a little bit, again, it's marketed for the wrong reasons, and it's largely misunderstood by many people as well. Okay. So thanks once again for listening. If you haven't downloaded my guide yet, DM me the word gut right now on Instagram. I'll send it over. Excuse me, I've been talking too much already today. And of course, if you do need more help with this, there's also going to be a link in the show notes where you can learn more about coaching. Okay. That's something that I always want to put out there. We do help our clients with these kind of cases. And once again, stay tuned for the next episode. Thank you for listening. If you haven't yet, last question for you. Drop me a quick rating if you don't mind. And I'll talk to you next week. Again, more lifestyle based. And then afterwards, we'll continue the gut type of season, I guess, which will slowly move into more like, hormones, functional, autoimmune conditions, those kind of things as well. So we're going to have a lot of things to talk about. So thanks once again, and I'll talk to you soon.